Honor, respect, honor and respect, honor and respect. Divine all blessed greetings and salutations. It is another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Powered, produced, promoted, sponsored, and supported by NOIVD, New Orleans Annual International Voodoo Day. Become a part of something extraordinary. New Orleans International Voodoo Day is not just an event. It's a movement that celebrates culture, fosters education, and connects people from around the globe. By sponsoring this event, you are supporting a tax-deductible cause that preserves heritage, uplifts art and education, and fosters healing within the community and beyond. Your sponsorship goes beyond promoting your business. It demonstrates your commitment to cultural preservation and education while supporting a unique event that brings international recognition to New Orleans. Events like symposiums, art exhibitions, sacred processions, and global speakers offer unparalleled opportunities to honor history and inspire a brighter future. Supporting an event like this means empowering a community, enriching cultural understanding, and making a meaningful impact on the world. It connects your brand to a celebration that values unity, diversity, and progress while helping preserve traditions for generations to come. Join us in creating a legacy. Explore our sponsorship tiers and help us make New Orleans Annual International Voodoo Day an unforgettable celebration. Together, we can uplift the community and inspire the world. And we're certainly thankful and appreciative of those who continue to join us here for our live podcast, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday. Greetings to you and yours, Daniel Neal, faithful member of our community. We certainly do appreciate your support and your attendance. And my beloved co-host, who I will be unmuting momentarily, my beloved Elder Reggie. We identify here as Green Soap, leader and founder of Shrine of the White Cloth, co-administrator of NOIVD. We certainly do appreciate your continued support and participation. And our beloved Queen Mother, Sister Toni Val Martinez, we certainly appreciate your continued support and participation. And we will be unmuting your mics momentarily.
A dash of cayenne to the root.
Can you all hear that? Is there sound coming from this?
No sound.
Oh, wow. I don't know what's going on. Okay. All righty. We'll try that again on another.
I thought that was me.
Yes, indeed. We'll try that again on another night. We want to move forward tonight with our ongoing discussion. Do you ever feel the ground hum beneath your feet? Not just the rumble of a streetcar or the bass from a second line, but something older, something deeper. That's the ancestors talking. Here in New Orleans, they speak through the river, through the moss hanging low, through the smell of rain before it falls. They speak in a language you don't hear with your ears. You feel it in your bones. African spirituality is not just a religion. It's a way of being. It's the understanding that the world is alive. Every stone, every tree, every drop of water has a spirit. When our people were stolen from the motherland, they carried that knowing inside of them. Even when the chains clinked and the ocean block loomed. They whispered prayers in languages the overseers couldn't understand. They hid their gods in plain sight, calling on Ogu through St. Peter, Oshun through Our Lady of Charity. That's survival. That's brilliance. That's love. Now, root work, hoodoo, that's the child of many mothers. It's Africa, yes, but it's also Choctaw and Chichimacha, the French, the Spanish. It's the blending of herbs and prayers, the mixing of earth and spirit. It's knowing which root will heal a fever, which powder will keep harm from your door, and which candle to light when your heart is breaking. People think root work is just spells, charms, and magic, but it's more than that. It's a conversation with the unseen. It's a way to set things right when the law won't protect you, a way to call justice when the courts turn their backs on you. It's the medicine of the oppressed and the science of the soul. In America, root work has always been a quiet rebellion. When the system said you have no power, root workers said, watch me. They healed the sick when hospitals wouldn't take us. They blessed the fields so the crops would grow, even when the soil was tired. They gave women the means to protect themselves in a world that wanted to own them. And yes, sometimes they cursed because justice isn't always gentle. Sometimes you need a hot foot powder to send trouble walking. Sometimes you need to tie a knot so a liar's tongue stays still. And that's not evil, that's balance. That's the same balance the ancestors taught. If you plant, you must also weed. Here in New Orleans, you can still feel it. Walk down Rampart Street and you'll pass shops selling oils, candles, and roots. Step into Congo Square on a Sunday and close your eyes. You'll hear the drums that once called the enslaved to dance, to trade, to remember who they were. You'll feel the rhythm that traveled across the Atlantic, that survived the Middle Passage, that refused to die. This city is a crossroads between the living and the dead, between Africa and America, between the seen and the unseen. And at the crossroads, you make your offerings, you speak your truth, and you listen for the answer. So, in my closing for today, I want to offer that African spirituality in New Orleans isn't a relic. It's very much alive and breathing. It's in the grandmother who sweeps her porch every morning to keep bad spirits away. It's in the young man who wears a mojo under his shirt for protection. It's in the prayers whispered over gumbo, in the brick dust laid across a threshold, in the candle burning low in the window sill at night. Root work is America's hidden heartbeat. It's the proof that no matter how far we are taken from home, we carry home inside of us. We carry the river, the drum, the root, and the flame, as long as we remember, as long as we honor, the ancestors will keep speaking. Can you hear them? Listen closely. They're calling your name. And please do come on in, our beloved Queen Mother Sister Toni Martinez, share your experience and your stories. Elder Reggie, do please come on in and join us. All is a blessing. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Hello, everyone out in the listening audience and on the panel. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving Day and enjoyed your time with your family. Um, my family Thanksgiving gathering is tomorrow, but
Mm.
I've never felt the earth like move under my feet. What I get is the hair stands up on the back of my neck and it creeps up my scalp like somebody touching me. It kind of make me shiver. And I know something is near. When I see butterflies just hanging in front of me without moving, just staying there for too long in my mind. To me, that's the ancestors. That's my ancestors. I see my ancestors in the butterfly. And I can smell them sometime when I smell rose for no reason, or cherry wood tobacco that my daddy used to smoke in his pipe. I'll just smell it out the blue for no reason. And that's, to me, that's them coming by, saying hi, saying hello, saying we love you. I felt a breeze come up out of nowhere on a still day, and not a tree move while I'm sitting on the porch, sitting in a park, sitting on a fish pond. Oh my goodness. When that happens on a fish pond and the breeze just comes, and I mean a breeze just comes up and passes, I know that's my mama, because that was me and her thing, fishing. It don't happen often, but it does happen when I'm fishing. And that lets me know that's her right there. But what about you, Elder Reggie? What's your
Yeah.
experiences?
Blessings, Sister Toni, Divine Prince Collective Audience. And we're still in the holidays of Thanksgiving, just to remind people to be easy on themselves. For me, I move a lot. Well, I used to move a lot through the cemetery, especially St. Louis Cemetery #2. Hope, whenever I used to could get over there. And the third one is, it's called St. Roch Cemetery off of St. Roch and Claiborne, back in that area. I don't know why. I always like cemeteries, and something draws me to the cemetery all the time. But when I go, it's an intuitive listening. I know these crypts and spirits are speaking to me, but it's not verbal. It's just an intuitive type thing. And as I move through the cemeteries, sure enough, it's the message and what I needed to pick up, I usually get. And so I know when I'm coming close to a cemetery, I could pick up the vibrations. But when I'm in cemeteries, yes, I can't explain it, but it's surreal for me. And I didn't know a lot about the Haitian voodoo until recently. And I didn't realize they work with the dead as strong as they do. And I really admire that, because a lot of the Loas and some of the deities from the Haitian side of things are coming from the graveyard. And when, as I stumbled up on that and I see that as his movement, I really appreciate that, because there is still power there in what we call the other world, or the realm of the ancestors, the abode of the ancestors, the graveyards. And so for me, I continue and will always continue to pour libations and be remindful of all those that passed on and they are housed in that other world. I'll
I
stop for
used
now with that.
I used to live by a cemetery on Washington, close to LaSalle Street.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you might know where that's at,
I
Elder
do.
Reggie. They used
I
to
do.
have a incinerator right across the street from it, where they used to burn trash. And I used to notice that the kids played in there with no problem. They ran between the graves and they played it ball, hide and seek. They stood on top of the graves, because a lot of those graves were actually in ground with
Mm-hmm.
big um brick high rises on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids sat on them with no problem. But the adults, they walked on the other side of the street. They crossed themselves when they passed there. I mean, they would walk they would literally cross the street, and I had no problem with walking in there. Um, in
Mm-hmm.
fact, one night a guy was following me. I used to work on Claiborne, close to Jackson, at Alexis Chicken. and they would close 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And I would walk home, and I stayed 2 blocks off of St. Charles. So that was a good little walk from Claiborne to 2 blocks off of St. Charles.
That's
So
right.
one morning, a guy was following me in a car, and I knew he was following me. And when I got to the cemetery, I noticed the cemetery had not been locked. And I also knew that I was on the 6th Street side of the cemetery, but I knew on the Jackson Street side of the cemetery, the fence was cut. So he was trying to talk to me like, hey, baby, where you going? I could give you a ride. So I looked at the cemetery and told him, don't worry, I'm home. And I went in there, and not to mention, I had on a white uniform,
Ooh, Sister
all white
Toni.
shirt and pants. I turned around and looked at him and told him, I'm good, I'm home. And went up in the cemetery and kept walking. And all I could hear was tires screeching. He was getting out the way. I didn't even
Definitely.
have to go to Jackson's side. I just waited out the way and went right back out the 6th Street side gate that was left open, because usually somebody locked it at night. But that particular night, I guess the ancestors had it open for me to duck off in now.
Yes, I agree with that. And New Orleans it's like becoming synonymous with the cemeteries. I really like in the video Divine Prince usually play at the end. They're doing part of the video is in a cemetery. I like that also, because when I studied the WPA writings in the 1930s, and this is where they did a lot of the recording from hoodoo, voodoo, and root work of the workers. Because still in the 1930s, people wasn't as educated as they are now. And so as Herkovitz and others done the research, even Zora Neale Hurston, the people will always make reference to the cemetery, because whenever you would go to the cemetery, outside of burying someone there, or All Saints Day, which is November the 1st, they always felt you was going to do some type of hoodoo voodoo work at the cemetery. And because people always knew that transition of life over there had meaning and power to them. And it's still a pillar today, in a sense, if you know how to work the cemetery. There's work you do, but you got to know how to work it. Now, Sister Toni, even though you walked in the cemetery and you was moving on intention and good faith for safety, the spirit still opened that gate. They still protected you, and I think that was a beautiful thing. Because go ahead, sister. Yeah.
Yeah, because I walked that every night I came from work. I walked that path, and that gate would always be locked with a chain. But that
Mm-hmm.
night, and it was cracked open just enough so I could see it was open and the chain wasn't there. And my mind didn't take no time to second guess what I told this man. It just came out my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
good. I'm home. And I
Yeah.
just walked in the gate. And he just
Wow.
hurried up and burnt rubber getting out of there.
Wow.
I
And I
You
also
don't
know,
think
think
it's
I ever seen that gate unlocked again past that night.
wow. That's that's definitely a mystery. Yes.
I
Mm-hmm.
think it's
Divine
also
Prince.
important to note that people are often seeking connection and intervention from Loa and Orisha and Abasan, but we all have ancestors, everyone. We all share ancestors. And indeed, God is always present, but so too are our front line of defense, which is our ancestors that survive in us and through us, through our blood, through ancestral memory. So I teach and share, as I was taught, that that first whisper, that first warning, is often your ancestors and your dead relatives who know you and know what you are confronted with on the earthly plane, who will press through and speak through first. So a great deal of our practice, I would say a near 45 to 50% of our practice, whatever the particular lane or path is steeped in, has a foundation in ancestral acknowledgement, uh, in honor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
very much so. And not thinking back, I walked those streets at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Even when I lived before I moved to 6th Street, I was walking from Jackson from one end of the methamphetamine project almost to the other end where the big church was. And
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like I wasn't walking by myself, but it wasn't like a human presence. It was nobody following me except for that night. It was nobody hanging out really. And I just didn't have no fear doing walking from work. I enjoyed it
Mm-hmm.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how
Yeah.
they say the streets of New Orleans was bad? I used to walk from the projects, the Desire in the Florida projects, 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, ride my bike across the Florida Avenue Back Bridge without a thought.
Yeah.
Which I guess you can say I was crazy or whatever, or female, and I was in my teens. And
Well,
I
you know,
just never had a fear.
yeah, I wouldn't call you crazy because you're still amongst the living today. So it was your spirit guides, your elevated ancestors, your ancestors. They always have been looking out for you, and they're still doing it today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But back to the cemeteries of New Orleans is that especially when we are dealing with voodoo or hoodoo, whatever, the cemetery works also as an altar in a way. Because, like me, I didn't have not one relative in them St. Louis cemeteries. That was mainly for free people of color or whites. If you was a slave or poor, you couldn't be buried there. But there's an energy that still draws me there. So I know that's elevated ancestors that's moving through. But there's so much history knowledge that the cemeteries want to give up. And they need people to record it and bring forward the stories, and there's something that's genuine within that. But a lot of people have a fear of cemeteries, and the dead cannot harm me. I'm just being honest about that. You got to be more worried about the living than the
Yes.
dead. Yes, yes, yes. But the spirits, I mean, discarnated spirits do move around and do things and try to shake you up. But discarnated spirits have never physically shot a person, stabbed a person, or nothing of that nature. They'll scramble your mind and mess with you like that, but they're not physically killing you as if we see in Hollywood and things of that nature.
Uh,
But then also with the cemeteries, which I don't do, I don't mess with it. But there's bone work. There's different bones and things you can work from a cemetery to get certain things done. Usually what they call left hand, dark stuff. No, I don't mess with that. It's more of the energy within the soil, within the concrete that gives up information to me. Hmm. So I'll rest with that at that.
I really wasn't around cemeteries until I was in my 20s, and moved from the lower ninth ward. Elder Reggie, I don't even know of a cemetery in the lower ninth ward until you get way back in Chalmette.
Right. No, there's no cemetery in the lower ninth ward where all my family is both there. You got to go Chef Origin Tilly Road and go back to
Yeah.
yeah, the big cemetery back there. I just was there November 1st. Oh,
I,
Rush
And
Haven.
almost as
Hmm.
powerful too as cemeteries is ancestral land. And some of us
Hmm.
are still knowledgeable and privy of our ancestors' land or the area that our most recent ascended ancestors survived and lived on. I make my way into the Mississippi Delta at least once a year, usually in the middle of the summer, and I pull up a whole cotton plant off of my great grandparents' burial ground. We know where they're buried. At some point, that area stopped being cared for, and somehow ended up in the hands of a commercial cotton developer. So there's a cotton field now directly on top of where my great grandparents and older were buried.
Oh,
So I
wow.
go there and pour libation and make offerings. First priest, brother Joshua, and I, we pull up a cotton plant. We've traveled, certainly for funerals, to that same area, and we acknowledge, our people collectively in that region. But having that connection to your grandmama or your great grandparents or older's land, even if it's under new ownership, can also have a powerful effect. My great grandfather, father, my mother's my mother's grandfather, um, built a house, two houses really, in Kirkwood, Missouri, which stood for decades, and now there's actually a movie studio built right on top of where my grandmother's property was. So that connection to my career in TV, movies, and film, I don't see it as a coincidence, at all. So if you're able to do your research and find out where your people were and may still be dwelling, that land can be and is just as powerful as cemeteries. And as Elder Reggie said, often uh, we don't have, uh, claim to these cemeteries or have blood relationships necessarily in these cemeteries. But I think what makes St. Louis Cemetery number one so powerful is the condensed nature of the original city plan. And it was first within the walls of the French Quarter, and then they moved it once they acquired those extra few blocks. They moved it outside the French Quarter city walls to across Rampart. And so we know that ancestral ancestors worked that land, worked that ground. As Sister Toni Val mentioned in the previous podcast, we know that Congo Square engulfed a great deal of that region and has now been erased. So there's a sacred nature, I believe, to not only St. Louis Cemetery number one, but Treme, the French Quarter, and many of the older areas of our city. And I find that to be the case from region to region.
So, Divine Prince, the new owner of the land, did not even remove the graves?
Now that I'm not clear on, uh, common sense would suggest to me that they probably did the best that they could, but certainly we know that there's still remnants that still remain. When we consider Marie Laveau's house on St. Anne, which is in that extra 3 or 4 blocks of the French Quarter that got added on later on. Some of you may not be aware that there was a wall that circled the entire French Quarter, which was the city of New Orleans in its entirety at that time. And St. Louis Cemetery number one would have been within that wall in the French Quarter. So when they expanded the French Quarter, I believe an extra 4 blocks, they decided it was too close proximity to bury the dead, with the living, and they moved St. Louis Cemetery number one to 4 blocks away, or 3.5 blocks away, to across Rampart Street, closer to my house. We also know that there was a prison in this neighborhood at that time, and many other infirmaries and facilities that hold trauma energy, stress energy in this region. But no, we don't really um, have any documented proof to how cleanly, for lack of better language, they were able to remove any of those bodies. It takes me back to the movie Poltergeist, the original
Mm.
Poltergeist, which brought to many of our awareness that many ancestral grounds, indigenous ancestral grounds, slave grounds, have just been buried over, built over.
Mhm.
New York City unveiled, I believe in the 80s or the 90s, a large ancestral burial ground that had
Yeah.
been
Mhm.
built over, in Manhattan, that is now acknowledged and honored and seen as sacred. So we know that there are bodies probably all over the place, not just in the
Yeah.
French Quarter and in St. Louis Cemetery #1 in Treme, but probably all over the place, that we've lost documentation and knowledge of.
The spillway,
Mhm.
where they let the water go in the overflow of the river, that's just, we already know that that's two cemeteries they wiped out in the
Yep.
flood. Two separate black cemeteries that they
Mhm.
just say we just gonna flood it when we need to flood it. And that's where the
Same thing.
spillway is.
Yeah, same thing with Gerard. It was called Gerard Street Cemetery, and I remember when they tore it down to build what we call the Superdome now in the '70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big cemetery, and a lot of blacks was buried there, and they just tore it down and built the Superdome on top of it. Man, that
But
was
it was
messed up.
kind of very unkept.
Yeah, yeah, I
It was
understand.
really kept because I think, like you said, it was a lot of black people buried in there.
Hmm.
Storyville, the black
That's
Storyville
right.
was in
Mm-hmm.
that area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the descendants, moved on from that area when all of that got dismissed because people lived in the area, not only um those working in that industry. And they didn't go back to keep the cemeteries up, and they were very old. They were very old. Some of the coffins, the things was even falling apart. I remember that
Mm-hmm.
cemetery. Now it's a parking lot.
Yeah, well, part of the dome is of it. The Superdome is built on it, and when the Saints would never win, people would say
I
it was the
know.
curse of going over that cemetery, of taking that cemetery to make mowing it down to make
Yeah.
use of the dome in the parking lot and things of that nature. Yeah, and mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what they say. The curse of the saints is the Gerard Street Cemetery.
Yes, yeah.
I know they even had somebody go in there and do a voodoo ceremony to try to get rid
Mm,
of it. Ah,
that's
My
true.
godmother, Ava K. Jones.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Divine Prince. Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
And
But
wasn't that a pauper's cemetery underneath the dome? So wouldn't there also have been, the unnamed, the
yeah.
unmentionable, the tragic
Mm-hmm.
would have also been under that ground?
yeah,
Yes. In Charity Hospital, it was the big hospital at the time, right? And when you had different people, the Jane Does died and things of that nature. Sometimes they did put them there, like you say. It was either there or Hope Cemetery back in City Park. Hmm.
yeah,
But what makes New Orleans unique, and as we tie it to voodoo, there are City of the Dead tours. People are coming to New Orleans just to visit the cemeteries. I'm not
yes.
saying it don't happen in other cities, but the frequency and the different cemeteries that they have in this city is a serious tourist attraction.
And what I think too that make the New Orleans Cemetery such a tourist attraction is that the graves are above ground. The graves are above ground for most of them. The cemeteries where the tourists go at, and they actually have some beautiful work in those
Mm-hmm.
cemeteries, on those crypts, some great artwork on
Mm-hmm.
the name plates as well as the statues that stand in the crypts, in the vaults, in the walkways. and
We
those
do.
cemeteries. And I think that's what a lot of people find strange, because I don't know too many places that they do that.
Mm-hmm.
Bury them. Even in other parts of Louisiana, driving through, I see the people buried in the ground.
And the rumor has it that it had to do with the low, the water table, in New Orleans. But that's not really the case, because we know that the French Quarter and St. Louis Cemetery #1, particularly its original location, sit on the highest mound of ground in the city. That mound actually begins to dip off after you cross Rampart Street. However,
Mm-hmm.
we know that if you go into the back portion of St. Louis Cemetery #1, what they call the Protestant sector, the non-Catholic sector, almost all of those bodies are buried underground in the back portion of that cemetery. So I believe the above ground burial tradition came from Europe, and with the privileged and the wealthy and the successful, in the city, who were able to create lavish tombs, and whatnot, and allow their family members to be buried in St. Louis Cemetery #1 and #2.
Yeah.
And I know that they've recently changed some of the rules, so there are internationally acknowledged musicians and figureheads that are also buried now in St. Louis Cemetery #1. Papa
Mm-hmm.
Fonfon, may he rest in Guinean, Haitian musician and Hogan, who spent his last years here in the city of New Orleans. He is buried in St. Louis Cemetery #1. If you know, you know. It was not publicly acknowledged. The funeral in the second line was not even public. But if you are a part of our community and were active in our community, you know that he's there and you know exactly where he is. And so we know that the history of that cemetery is fueled by Catholic motivations and the wealthy and the successful and the well known. While the remainder of the cemeteries in the city typically took on a more Americanized below ground demonstration.
Yes, but what I wanted to just shed light on, the actual French Quarter cemetery was St. Peter's Cemetery, and it runs from Rampart, I think, down to Bourbon, from Esplanade to maybe St. Peter's itself. It was that 4 square block, and as people start building homes, and in just fairly recent, within the last 10 or 15 years, they built home and they found another cadre of bodies. But all those bodies was buried 6 feet deep. There was not corpse, and as Divine Prince said earlier, above ground. Back then, they was burying everybody below ground. Now, in the
Mm-hmm.
history and the research I've done on the first St. Louis Cemetery one, because so many people was dying of yellow fever and the bubonic plague at the time, and the church, Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, there was so many bodies going to the church until they got St. Louis Cemetery #1 commission to start burying the people, because so many people was dying at that time, Catholics anyway. Of course, like we say, Protestants and other denominations was dying also, but this was a Catholic city, and if you was Catholic, you got carte blanche to everything. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one thing they did. They've separated them cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
They separated them cemeteries. You could not be buried in the Catholic cemetery if you was not Catholic, and also depending on how you died, you couldn't be buried inside the gates of the cemetery. You know, this
Yeah.
whole everywhere you walk in this city, they got a body under there, whether it's 6 feet or 12 feet or 8 feet, whatever is there. Because at some point, somebody was living in that region where you live at, and they had people die.
Yes.
Especially the regions like up around St. Charles Avenue and to the river where they had the plantations at. You know, when their slaves died, they buried them in those areas not far from those plantations.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know
Yeah.
some non-slaves wasn't buried where the slaves was, and they still was buried close to the plantation.
Right. From the little research I've done, I have not seen one slave. I came across one slave that is buried in at least St. Louis Cemetery #1. They may have a few in 2 because we know Marie Couvent from the Couvent School was born in Africa and she was a slave, but she married a free person of color, and she's buried in St. Louis Cemetery #2. But I couldn't run across or find a slave that is born in St. Louis Cemetery #1. But St. Louis Cemetery #1 is still a powerful place, of course. Debatable or not, Marie Laveau crypt is there. We're not trying to debate that and none of that, but it's still an important anchor for the city of New Orleans and tourism. And it's a powerful energy there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's time for our show to come to an end. I'm going to turn it over to the Divine Prince to thank our listening audience on all the other social media branches, and then turn it over to Elder Reggie to close us out.
Yes, we
Thank you,
certainly are
Mr.
grateful and appreciative of those who continue to listen and support from my Facebook page, my Facebook group page, from the Queen Mothers group page, as well as my Facebook group page, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, formerly known as Twitter. And certainly we are thankful for our listening and participating Instagram audience. J. Miz, we certainly appreciate you. Shaz from 12, Lotus Flower, Melanin Goddess, thank you so much for coming through. Mintogram, we certainly appreciate you. Draco Cree, a traveling polyglot, we appreciate you. Dan W8967, thank you for coming through. Peaches 509, we appreciate you. Jazz Eladi 120, we appreciate you. Rachel Knowles 09, thank you for coming by. Sand Blazing Star, Sweet Aloy, and Ribard Guy. I hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly. We certainly appreciate your continued support and listenership, and we hope that you will join us again on tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Central. I'm sorry, on Monday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time on a social media platform near you, or by way of our QR code at the top right corner of your screen. Always a blessing.
Good night, everyone. After Elder Reggie make his announcements.
Yeah, okay. We have an advertisement. Our next moon ritual prayer and application ceremony will occur on the next new moon, which is Friday, December the 19th. The location is 710 Clewitt Street, and the time is 6:30 p.m. We always do our ritual spiritual warfare in honor of current situation that's going on in America. So if you're able to come out to that night, or you're in the area of the region, please come out and support what we do. But for our people that don't live in the city proper, if you do visit New Orleans, look at some of the cemeteries, visit some of the cemeteries. They are institutions within themselves. With that, I say, lest we forget, the spiritual medicine of voodoo brings healing and relief from the shackles of slavery that binds the master and the slave to the same chain of social division. We continue to have work to do. With that, I say, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Good night, everyone. We'll see you on Monday. Know we love you, and we'll be back.
Have a great weekend. Good night.
Odabo.
Fire upon them. Drums of Lagos, bass of King.
Kingston. Clash sound fi expose the fiction. Listen. Pretendians, changing face like chameleon. Pretendians, no roots, no dominion. Fire. Say grandma Choctaw princess DNA don't blend. Your DNA is from Africa, you're not Native American. Pretendians, changing face like chameleon. Pretendians, no roots, no dominion. Say grandma Choctaw princess DNA don't blend. Your DNA is from Africa, you're not Native American. Yeah. Looking at the mirror, reflection and light. Faking up history, deny. Claiming Hebrew pharaoh, even Scottish blood. But the truth in your veins run deep like flood. Talking 7-foot aliens landing in the land. Now you're wearing costumes, playing every hand. Culture appropriation from every nation. But the roots of your story miss foundation. Pretenders, changing face like chameleon. Pretenders, no roots, no dominion. Say grandma Choctaw princess DNA don't blend. Your DNA is from Africa, you're not Native American. You bashing by rashes on the daily scene, but when fame comes, suddenly claiming the gene. Double-faced talk, contradiction, loud confusion in the heart, still boast to the crowd. Egyptian crown, Hebrew scroll, Scottish bagpipes still can't fill the hole. Trying on cultures like clothes from a rock, but the tag on the soul say Africa back. Pretenders, changing face like chameleon. Pretenders, no roots, no dominion. Say grandma Choctaw princess DNA don't blend. Your DNA is from Africa, you're not Native American. Pretend not the bloodline, pretend not the shrine. Claiming every story but you can't claim mine. Truth stand firm, time after time. See the warriors of Africa standing proud while pretendians whisper falsehoods loud. Claiming every tribe, every creed, every face, still losing themselves, can't find their place. Choctaw lie, Cherokee disguise, but the test results cut through the lies. Roots don't bend to the will of a fraud. Africa sing on the drums of God. Pretendians, changing face like chameleon. Pretendians, no roots, no dominion. Say grandma Choctaw princess DNA don't blend. Don't match. Your DNA is from Africa, you're not Native American. Pretendians, history bend like a broken pen. Pretendians, fire.